Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of the Savuti Diaries. Well, after spending a good 2 days in Mababe and of course having that lovely lion sighting that you saw in episode 1, we made our way to Savuti via Mababe and the Marsh Road, with just a few stops along the way. Well, it didn't take us long before we arrived at the Mababe Savuti Gate. This gate was very quiet and we were about the only people there entering the gate. It didn't take us long to sign in and register the vehicle into the park, and soon we were on our way. We decided to take the Marsh Road, not the Sandridge Road, because we wanted to take the scenic route. It turns out that the Marsh Road was actually very, very good, and a good idea too, because we had this beautiful sighting of this large pride of lions. This lion pride was very big, with lots of young ones. Apparently they are hunting the large herd of buffalo that hang around and move through the Mababe area. Very cool to see. We didn't spend too long with them as we knew we had a long road ahead of us to Savuti, but it was a good start to the morning. Having spent a little bit of time with the Marsh Pride of Mababe, we made our way onwards towards Savuti. We found that the Marsh Road was very good, very dusty, and of course at this time of year, surprisingly, there was a lot of wind, which normally we expect a lot more wind towards August, September. So this morning being so windy was quite a surprise, but it made for some epic scenery as these wildebeest galloped across the Mababe plains, piling up dust clouds as they went along. It was a really cool sighting, and we spent a little bit of time watching them. No doubt these herds of wildebeest also attract a lot of predators, along with the large herds of buffalo that move through this area. And it wasn't long before we found more lion tracks going along the road. Unfortunately, these lion tracks were going in the opposite direction to where we were going, so we didn't get to follow them. But it's still super cool to see them. It wasn't long before our 4 a.m. early morning adventures and antics following the lion of the morning was catching up with us. It was time to stop and make ourselves some coffee. We found this beautiful stop point just at the edge of the Mababe marsh. There was this beautiful shepherd's tree, and we parked our vehicle there and made ourselves some coffee. It was, however, very, very windy. As mentioned earlier, it is very surprising to have this amount of wind at this time of year, but we kept moving onwards and the car was going very well. As we got closer to Savuti and we got more comfortable driving, we thought that it would be a doddle, but it wasn't, and disaster struck. We found ourselves balancing and sat atop a middle maneki, and let me explain what went wrong. Well, here we were driving along, and I decided to drive on this middle maneki section, as you see, and then I wasn't paying attention and I slipped and ended up like this with all 4 wheels off the ground, and that's what happened. So back to the video. So here we are, stuck on top of this ridge, all 4 wheels off the ground. And I must say, in the videos, it doesn't look that concerning, and you would think that it wouldn't take much to get us off. But I swear that if we had been left to ourselves and my antics with the high lift jack, we would have been here for a couple of hours. So after trying to put some wood under the tires, I got out the high lift jack. And I must say, high lift jacks are a great tool, and I highly recommend getting used to using one, looking at different ways that it can be used. It's not just used for changing tires. You can also use it for shifting vehicles out of ridges, just like this. However, this is a slow and tiring process, and I must admit I was very pleased when a very friendly crew came along in a safari vehicle. They were taking supplies and staff to one of the lodges in Savuti, and they were kind enough to stop, unhitch their trailer, and come and give me some assistance. And I am so grateful that they did, because if it had not been for them, I think I would have been there for a long time. As you can see, the tow rope snapped the first time round. This is because it was one of those stitched ones, and it is a good little thing to take note of, that if your tow rope has stitched loops, they're basically pretty useless. So just tie it and it'll be much stronger. We got out our spades, I got out our poop shovel, and there's another reminder, I think I'm going to get a proper sized shovel. And we dug away the middle section, and you can tell we were quite well stuck. What a relief it was to be pulled out off that ridge. Shame. The poor safari did do well, and it was no fault of the car, but rather the fault lay fully with me, the driver, for not paying attention and trying to balance around. As you can see, very dusty. The dust is like talcum powder, and it just was everywhere. And it was at this point that I was very glad that I wasn't wearing some flip-flops, my usual footwear. But I was very tired and not a little grumpy from our adventures. Anyway, got everything else tied back on the roof. The high lift jack had to go back, all the equipment that had been dislodged, and we made our way onwards to Savuti, which fortunately wasn't very far away. By the way, I hope you're enjoying the giraffe footage. I noticed in our last video many of you commented that you would like to see more giraffe footage, and so here we are. I did try and block the footage, I'm not going to lie, but you will see a lot of giraffe in this video as well. I must say the scenery is beautiful, and seeing the Savuti Hills is very special. It's something that I'd read about and seen pictures of, and there are very few hills in Botswana. So to find these hills that have been here since the time forever, really, it was so special. And it was also very special and a great relief to arrive at our campsite. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please leave a like or comment or share it. It really makes a huge difference, and we really appreciate it. And thanks so much for all your support so far on the videos. We really appreciate it. Super cool. Anyway, it was time for a cold drink. We were dead tired at this point.
Feel a little bit rattled.
The car did well.
Car did well. And I just want to... Well, Savuti has got my nice new gym green shoes. Heather's are looking a lot better. Look how dirty my hands are. So yeah, we'll try and clean them up. I think they will clean up all right. But yeah, they're doing their job, and they're very comfortable, and I think I've got clean feet, so that's good. Oh yeah, look at this one. Just busy sitting, getting recovered from the journey. It wasn't too bad, and the old safari did very well. and we got here. So going to get unpacked, set up the tents, and yeah, get settled in. We're here for 6 nights, so we should make ourselves comfortable. But I think we're going to set up tents, get unpacked, and then go and see if we can have a shower. So that's the plan.
Lots of people are surprised or wonder why we use a ground tent and not a rooftop tent. Well, personally, I've always slept in ground tents, and even since I was a little kid. And I love the feeling, and we both love being able to listen to the animals sniffing around the tent, and just being that a little bit closer to nature is really cool. But one of the main reasons is the ability to leave early in the morning without the stress of packing down a rooftop tent. As you will see, we often leave camp very early, or at least as early as we possibly can. So after getting our tent up, we headed over to the showers, which are in this big bunker. It looks like a fort, and that is to protect it from the elephants. And if you look at old pictures of Savuti, you will see that the very first ablutions were often attacked by elephants.
What are you doing? Maybe there's one up here somewhere. Where are you? There you are. My goodness. Animals everywhere.
After a refreshing shower, it was time for an even more refreshing gin and tonic. We were so tired, and this is not surprising because we really didn't get much sleep. We had spent the whole night, the night before, listening to that lion roaring, basically itching to get up and go and find him. And then we had driven all the way to Savuti. So here at 3 o'clock, as is our tradition, we set out on a game drive. But not really knowing Savuti at this point, we kind of somehow chose the worst possible loop and drove the most sandiest roads ever. And so to be honest, we went out on this little game drive and, as mentioned, somehow took the worst possible roads. Every single turn we took the sandiest option. So having already got stuck on that ridge because of my bad driving, we were feeling very rattled, to be honest, and did not look forward to the prospect of getting stuck in any situation whatsoever. So we were not impressed with all the sand, and I think both of us on this drive, we were just thinking, wow, I hope Savuti isn't going to be like this, just sand everywhere. Here towards Harvey Pan, it's not so sandy, but we didn't actually drive around Harvey Pan that much on this first drive. In fact, we turned off and, as you can see, went down the sandiest roads we could. And after going through the sandiest roads we could on this side of the river, we turned around and headed back to the other side of the river, and drove around some more sandy areas around Sable Hill. Now, I will say this, if you do go to Savuti and you drive around and you end up by Sable Hill, just don't go by Sable Hill. Unless there's really good reason for you to go to Sable Hill, don't go there. The sand is so thick, and it's not fun to drive around. So this is what we did on our first afternoon drive in Savuti. We drove around Sable Hill, lots of deep sand. I suppose in the rainy season, around Sable Hill would actually be quite nice. But in the dry season, it's just thick, deep-rutted sand, which was fine. The Safari handles it very well, the sand, but it's just not fun driving in it. So feeling absolutely exhausted, we just head back to camp and decided to get dinner on and have an early night.
That good.
Tired.
Bye.
It's our little campsite, and it's got this little table thing got a fireplace. It's got a square fireplace and a round one. We used the round one. It used to have a really cool tree. This one over here. Excuse me. Yeah, so there's our tent set up. Car done okay. And then our friends are coming, and I think they're going to put their tent underneath there. And that tent is now the kitchen tent, and we're just going to put the kitchen things in it. That was our friend's idea, and that is our friend's tent. So we'll see. Maybe we're going to become those people who have a kitchen tent. I don't know, but it'll be interesting. But yeah, it used to be a really good campsite with that tree until it fell over. And so now you don't really have a big tree for shade, but these little trees here seem to make quite a lot of shade. I'll put a washing line somewhere, and there you can just see the clothes hanging. But actually under these small trees, there's actually a lot of shade. So I think number 7 is not the best, and number 5, sorry, is not the best Savuti campsite. But it's not the worst. So yeah. What's going on here?
Making ketchup sandwiches.
Ketchup sandwiches. What's going on there?
We're gonna make bacon sandwiches for dinner.
Yeah. Got some bacon rashers cooking over there. I've always got such a dirty finger. It's disgusting.
My hands are clean.
So yeah, bacon sandwiches for dinner because we are so tired, and so we're just doing that, and then we're going to have an early night. We didn't really sleep much last night. We were up listening to that lion, trying to work out where he was, and just itching to get up. So yeah, we were up out of our tent at 4:30, driving out at like 5, so it was early. So cooking this, make those sandwiches, wash hands, pack away, and go to bed. And we'll see you in the morning.
After a lovely night's sleep, we woke up early at 5:45, because of course we can leave camp at 6, to make our morning coffee as per usual and head out on our first morning drive in Savuti. We were super excited. We decided to go over to Harvey's Pan and then drive down all the way to Rhino Flay, crossing the marsh to Mababe, and then back to camp. Of course, with plenty of little stops along the way. This was a beautiful game drive this morning, and we had a good morning. Starting out early, it's surprising that even at 6 a.m. in the morning, it's still quite dark, and it is very useful having the spotlight, but it doesn't take long before it starts getting light. So, that's Rhino Flay. Let's just let me save that. Okay. So we're heading to Rhino Flay and then to Mababe Pan, and apparently I've got sources that tell me it's a good place to find the Marsh Pride. So we did hear the lions briefly last night over the roar of the camp's generators in this direction, so hopeful. But what we really want to see is leopard, so hopefully we'll find a leopard on our way.
Shout out to Austin for being our source.
Don't give away the source. I always find it interesting when you see elephants. Of course, Botswana is well known for its elephant population. But what is interesting is the size difference in elephants. If you drive in Nai pans, you'll notice that the elephants are really big, very thick tusks,
While you move to Kwai, you've got some also very big elephants, but a lot of broken tusks. But then when you head over to Chobe and Savuti, you find a much smaller elephant. The elephants seem smaller, their tusks seem thinner. In all, the Chobe elephants, I guess starting from Savuti and heading towards more and more towards Chobe itself, the elephants, maybe because of the denser population, the forests, they seem smaller. And it is little wonder then that the lions do attack and kill elephants in Savuti. As you can see, my gym green boots cleaned up. I did wash them in the shower and then dried them out, and they looked as good as new afterwards, so I was very pleased about that. This is the marsh, the road across the marsh, and it is absolutely stunning. And of course, moving through the marsh here in Savuti, we were looking for the Marsh Pride. That is the one pride of lying. You got the Marsh Pride and you got the Northern Pride. And so here in the marsh, we were hoping to find the Marsh Pride. And so we were looking everywhere we could and looking for tracks and any sign we could to show that they would be around. Having crossed the marsh from Rhino Flay, we arrived at Marabou Pan. This is amazing pan, and I think when there's a lot of water here, there wasn't a lot of water this time, but when there is a lot of water, I think that this pan must be a hot spot of activity. Just the amount of bones around this waterhole clearly shows that it is a killing zone and a feasting zone for predators. We took the road from Marabou towards the Sand Ridge, and this was a nice little road, and during our stay here we took this road quite often, not least because we found a lot of lion track activity on this road. I suspect that these lion tracks we were seeing here was a portion of the Marsh Pride that might have split off from the other Pride members and were perhaps hunting, because we soon followed other tracks, not these particular tracks. We came across some other tracks, and they led us back across the marsh towards this little tree island. And it was here, lying in the long grass, that we discovered the Marsh Pride, or at least a portion of the Marsh Pride. It seemed like the Marsh Pride had split up into little segments. So here we found lions, as per usual, sleeping. I feel like you always find lions 90% of the time they're sleeping, and here it was no exception. But it was so cool to see these little cubs. They weren't very, very small, but they were still young cubs and very cool to see. It's always interesting to find the lions, but I think one of the things we're always looking is to find the lions or a leopard or a buffalo or an elephant or any real animal with that beautiful morning sunrise light. And so when you do find a pride of lions like the Marsh Pride here, but it's not that perfect photographic time of day, what can you do? Nothing really, but sit and enjoy spending time with them and enjoy a cup of coffee, watch them, and that is always special. I think as photographers, sometimes you focus so much on having the right light, the right composition, that often you can lose a lot of the joy of a sighting just by the fact that the light wasn't good. But actually, it was a beautiful sighting. But we are so focused on the lighting or the composition of the situation that you actually leave the sighting with a bit of a bitter taste. But we enjoyed our time with the Marsh Pride, and here you find me trying to find the rattles and squeaks in our car. I find it so annoying driving with rattles and squeaks coming from the vehicle, which is surprising considering we drive such an old vehicle. And unfortunately now my wife, who in the past didn't mind the rattles and squeaks, has started to notice the rattles and squeaks. So now we both have become quite OCD about the rattles and the squeaks in the car. And so we stop every few moments to shove cushions and blankets and spray oil all over the car just to try and make it quiet. But yeah, let me know how you deal with the rattles and the squeaks, if you even notice them. But here we're at this baobab tree, which is just by the one hill. Now, as far as I know, this hill doesn't really have a name, at least not on the map. But it is the hill with the Bushman paintings, so maybe it's called Bushman Hill, I'm not quite sure. But there's this beautiful little picnic spot by the baobab tree. And we stopped here a few times, and there was this really cute little yellow-billed hornbill that just seems to live by this baobab tree. Every time we stop by the baobab tree, this little yellow-billed hornbill was here looking for crumbs after the picnickers. So we enjoyed our second cup of coffee here for the morning, and then headed back towards camp. Now, we were expecting our friends to arrive this morning, and in fact they did, which was very nice. But before heading up to camp, had to check the sightings board, mark our sightings. Now, I don't always mark our sightings, so sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But I always like to check. Let me know, do you mark your sightings or don't you mark your sightings? Why or why not? Let us know in the comments. But it was time to get back to camp and start breakfast. At this point, our friends had arrived, so they were busy setting up their camp, and we were cooking breakfast for all of us. Of course, bacon and eggs, a nice bottle of bubbly, and it was perfect. I must say, this campsite, because the tree's missing, unfortunately, at 11 o'clock, the cooking area by the fire is in direct sunlight, which makes cooking on this fire very uncomfortable. And it is one downside with CV5 as a campsite. After a lovely breakfast with our friends, we decided to celebrate their arrival with some pina coladas. Now, to be honest, I don't know how to make a pina colada, and I just knew what the ingredients were, and I kind of threw them all together and shook them. So if you've got some good tips of making a good pina colada or recipe, please leave it in the comments. I'd appreciate that. I don't know if I will make pina coladas in the bush again, but maybe I will. Yeah, but it was interesting. So after a nice afternoon nap, we head out on our afternoon drive, of course, at 3 o'clock. Now, it is interesting, we found in Savuti that the leopard is definitely starts to move around a lot earlier than in other parts of Botswana that we've noticed anyway. And we've noticed that in Savuti, the leopards can start moving around from as early as 3 o'clock, and maybe even earlier. And I'm not sure what the reason for this is. I personally suspect that it's because of the high population of hyenas. And I think this high population of hyenas makes hunting for the leopards much more challenging. And so they like to hunt earlier and get their food up in a tree as soon as possible. But we definitely noticed that leopard were about much earlier in Savuti, often from as early as 3 p.m. This is, of course, by Bushman Hill, coming up out of the channel and coming by that baobab tree where we had stopped in the morning for our coffee. A very interesting little area. We enjoyed spending time snooping around this Bushman Hill, the baobab, and Kudu Hill. A very interesting area, especially as you skirt along between the channel and the hills. There was a lot of tracks and clear indication of predators in the area. With our friends, we use the two-way radios to communicate, and they're short-range two-way radios, so often it means climbing on the roof to be able to communicate clearly. So that's what's happening over here, because our friends had seen a bit of a commotion with a whole lot of safari vehicles, and it turned out to be a leopard with a kill. And so we head over there to see what was happening. And we did find the leopard, but it wasn't the best sighting, just due to the fact that there were so many vehicles around this poor female leopard. We did get to see her, and I must say all the safari operators were very respectful and very helpful, very polite. And I must say, personally, I found that the safari operators in Savuti, especially the local safari operators, meaning the ones belonging to the lodges that are based in Savuti, they were very knowledgeable, very polite, and very friendly. So a big thumbs up, to the operators such as Belmond and Savuti, Camp Savuti. They were wonderful people, and it was a pleasure to talk to them while out on safari. But this female leopard was so cool to see, and in fact, some days later, another guide spotted this same female leopard walking across to Leopard Rock, carrying a tiny little baby cub in her mouth. So that was really special. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that, but it was beautiful to see her. As you can see, plenty of vehicles. So not the best sighting, but it was special to see her, and especially as she concluded her evening by strolling over to Leopard Rock, which just seems so fitting. We settled down in the pan by Leopard Rock to enjoy the sunset. I forget what this pan is called again. It will come back to me, and I'll probably mention it in the next video, because I know we go back here again. But we decided to head back home to meet curfew, and you can see we took the channel back home. A nice drive. We did find it a bit difficult here in Savuti with the curfew. The curfew is very strict, and you get to leave camp at 6 a.m., but you must be back by 6:30 on the dot, which means that if you're quite far away from camp, you actually have to leave very early to be able to make it back to camp in time. So, for example, if you went on an evening drive all the way to Mababe, it would take you, a good 30 to 35 minutes to get back to camp, of course, because you don't want to be speeding around the reserve. But we managed to do it. I think we were the first people to leave camp in the mornings, and definitely the last people to return, because these sunsets are just so beautiful. With this light fading very fast, we took out our spotlight as we looped around the waterhole just by the camp, just to see if anything was happening here. This waterhole by the camp is really convenient. It's a very nice spot to start your game drive off with, and also to end your game drive with. So after checking the waterhole, we crossed back over the bridge and made our way back to camp just in time, with a few minutes to spare for curfew, and we headed back to our campsite.
What are you doing in the camp?
We arrived back at camp to find that our friends had got the fire going, which was perfect. Tonight's dinner was a beautiful chickpea curry and chickpea curry that my wife had made and we had frozen for this occasion. We find now that freezing meals for camping just adds a nice variety to our dinners. And so we had this beautiful chickpea and chicken curry with garlic bread for dinner. Well, guys, I'm going to leave our episode 2 right here, and I will see you guys all back in episode 3 of the Savuti Diaries. I just want to say a big thank you for all your support on these videos, all your comments, all your likes, all your shares. We've reached 1,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. I cannot believe it. So thank you so much for all your support on that. And please, if you leave a comment, if you leave a like, if you share it, it makes a huge difference to how the YouTube algorithm picks up our videos. So thank you so much for that. Bye!